Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2022-23 season. My name is Dan and it's time for our Game Week 35 episode of the tier list videos. And guys, we've only got 4 game weeks left in this entire season. I can't believe how close we are to the end. So we've got another tier list today. I know the game week of 34 hasn't quite finished yet. So there's some interesting top picks in the transfers this week. So it's going to be an interesting video for sure. If you do enjoy it, please do drop a like. It really helps out the channel. And do subscribe if you're new around here. But let's have a look at the tier list. So we are going to be ranking the 30 most popular transfers in at time of recording and putting them on this particular tier list. And like I say, guys, because we are quite early in the week, not too many transfers have been made and we've got some really weird picks. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Let's start off with the 30th most popular transfer, and we'll move on from there with Emi Martinez, who I think I'm probably going to put in, I don't know, like, I guess somewhere between optional and avoid. Aston Villa have got a good fixture against Wolves next, but after that, it's really a bunch of tough fixtures for Aston Villa. They play the likes of Spurs, they play Liverpool, they play Brighton as well in this period, and I just feel like, is there going to be many clean sheets during this time? Probably not, but for this game week alone, maybe Martinez is going to be an option. So could he work as a one-week punt as a goalkeeper? I guess so. I guess he really could technically. He's going to be making saves as well in those tougher fixtures, so maybe that's going to be a little advantage for him. And Aston Villa do have a way of cheesing those clean sheet points. So, hey, maybe it could work out. Next transfer is going to be Bruno Fernandes, who I don't think is absolutely essential to buy this game week, but he's definitely a player who we do want to be having a look at in the near future. In game week 37, Manchester United do have a very nice double game week, and at that point we are going to want to be tripled up hopefully on Man United. Now Rashford is a very obvious player to own for that double game week. We're probably going to have at least one defender, whether that's Luke Shaw, Dalot or De Gea, maybe one of them. But the only other attacker from Manchester United that I feel is worth buying for this period is going to be Fernandes. So I feel like Fernandes, you could go on him right now. I don't think he's a must buy at this stage, but he's a really nice high ceiling player that could get us a lot of points. We've seen in previous game weeks that points have been coming for him. He's been getting so close to FPL returns so many times, and finally over the last couple of weeks we have kind of seen him finally getting those FPL returns. So hopefully a continuation of that. Fernandes, I do think, is a really good player that you guys are going to want to own at some point between now and the end of the season. There's no harm in buying him now if that's something you want to do. Ben White goes straight in avoid to spend 5 million on Arsenal defence that is playing this badly and who's about to play Newcastle, which is a really tough fixture for Arsenal. Newcastle scoring a lot of goals at the moment, so I think it's going to be another case where the Arsenal defence is not quite going to be able to keep those clean sheets against Newcastle. So unfortunately, it's going to be an avoid for pretty much all Arsenal defenders, and I really would be looking to sell those players as well if you already have them as well. Next up, Tony, who I feel like, you know, you can kind of just keep him if you want. Like, he's one of those players who can just tick over. Would I be buying him this game week? Not necessarily, but I think he's an okay player to own. I mean, we've got a kind of a fixture against Liverpool coming up, so is that going to be an opportunity for Brentford to score goals? Probably, because Liverpool don't really keep too many clean sheets as well. So Tony's just an okay player to buy. He's optional. I wouldn't really put him any higher than that. Next up, Martinelli. I'm going to put him in the avoid. I think we're pretty much avoiding all Arsenal players this game week. Maybe you can sneak in on some Arsenal players in game week 37, 38 if you don't have any. But for now, I don't think we want to be looking at Arsenal players too closely. So Martinelli is going to go in the avoid section for now. I think Newcastle, although they do seem to concede goals, they're a relatively strong defence, and I can't see Arsenal scoring more than 1 or 2 against them. And if they do, who's that going to be scoring the goals? Well, it could be Martinelli, it could be Trossard, it could be Jesus, it could be Saka, it could be one of the midfielders. You don't really know. So it's very, very difficult to place who's going to be the high-scoring players for Arsenal against Newcastle. I think that's a difficult fixture that I'd just be completely ignoring for this game week and trying to focus our attention on slightly different areas. De Gea, I think, is probably going to be a relatively good transfer. Like I said earlier, you want to triple up on Manchester United at some point before game week 37. We're in 35 now, so we don't have too long to be loading up on those Manchester United players. And like I say, Rashford is definitely a player you want to own. You want to own at least one defender, and then it's probably going to be a choice between Fernandes and then a second Manchester United defensive player. I think De Gea as a goalkeeper is a pretty decent pick for the remainder of the season, really. De Gea really is a player you can pick now and just play every single game week for the rest of the season, which is really good. And maybe that's the kind of goalkeeper you're looking for. He'd probably be my first choice in goal if I'm I'm looking for a goalkeeper for the rest of the season, to be honest. Yeah, so like him. Yeah, decent pick. Cody Gakpo, I'm going to put in probably somewhere between optional and avoid. I feel like there's better Liverpool players to own. And now that Liverpool's double game week has kind of been and gone, it's in the past now, I feel like that maybe we do need to be moving away from Liverpool players to a degree, keeping the strongest Liverpool players, of course, you know, the likes of Salah, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Jota as well, who's performing very well recently. Those kind of players we might still be thinking about a little bit, but some of the weaker Liverpool players, I think we can maybe give a miss to, maybe even consider selling. In fact, Gakpo, because of the rotation risk, I might even drop him down into the avoid category, because we've got Diaz back now, we've got Darwin Nunez knocking it on the door, Jota seems to be fairly nailed on when he's fit and available. Salah's going to be playing every single game, so it's difficult to say if Gakpo is even going to be nailed on going forward. But he is playing pretty well in general, but not necessarily getting a ton of FPL returns, but he's ticking along okay. So maybe I'm being a bit harsh. Optional, I guess he's an option to you guys. Harry Kane, I think he is a good transfer. I'm going to put him in the good transfer category. I feel like I sold Harry Kane last game week. I think a lot of you guys probably sold Harry Kane for game week 34 as well. But it would be quite nice to be able to get him in if possible, particularly for the last couple of games of the season. I think Harry Kane, even though Spurs are in a bit of trouble, he's just so reliable, isn't he? He's getting those FPL returns every single game week. You can't really go wrong with Harry Kane. He's just an absolute superstar in FPL in general this season, and he's having such a phenomenal season in FPL terms. So it's kind of gone a little bit under the radar because of the likes of Erling Haaland, because of the performance of Spurs in general. I think he's a little bit underappreciated. So if you can get Kane in to your team somehow, if you've got a bit of money in the bank or something like that, I would definitely consider him a player that you could just pick up right now for the rest of the season, just continue to own him, and he will tick along really nicely. Next up, Kaldun Mitoma, and I feel like he is probably going to be a great transfer, somewhere between good and great transfer. His numbers have dropped off a little bit recently. Of course, I'm recording this before Brighton have played their second game, but he did have that rotation, which hopefully should freshen him up for the remainder of the season, so I wouldn't judge him too much on that. There potentially are some better Brighton players to own at this point, but not really too many better than our good friend Kaldun Mitoma. So I think because we've got double game week in 36, it might be wise to get him now. Like, Brighton are playing Everton next, which is a really nice fixture. And then after that, you've got 2 double game weeks in a row. So a really decent time to pick up Brighton players in general. And particularly now that a couple of these players have had their rest, if you like, they should be fairly nailed on now for the remainder of the season. Joelinton is a little bit of a controversial one, but I actually kind of like this one. He's got some decent underlying numbers. He's been kind of under the radar player in many respects. And I feel like an underappreciated player. Typically, I would put him in as optional, but actually, I feel like if you're looking for a new midfielder in your team right now, you're obviously got this Newcastle team playing against Arsenal, who could concede a goal right now. They're more than capable of conceding at the moment. Newcastle scoring a lot of goals in general. Joelinton seems to be involved in a lot of these kind of goals for Newcastle, and we've got a double game week in 36, so that's only next game week, so it might be a good idea to plan ahead with those Newcastle players a little bit. So I'm going to put him high optional because it's Joelinton. If it was if Joelinton was a kind of a bigger name in FPL, a more consistently performing FPL asset, maybe he'd go a little bit higher. I still think there is a degree of risk to this pick, but in general, a really nice differential. Grealish, I'm not actually going to put as high as previously. I'm going to put him in good transfer because I do wonder about rotation risk. There has to be a time where Grealish is not playing for Manchester City. When De Bruyne is back, particularly, that's going to probably be kind of allow Grealish to be rotated and kind of prioritized maybe in some Champions League games, which might be Man City's focus going forward now that they kind of have, well, for all intents and purposes, secured the Premier League. Maybe I'm speaking a little bit early on that one, but they're top of the table now, so maybe a little bit of rotation is going to come into play. And Grealish, you really do feel like is a player who could do with some rest. And Man City have so many fixtures coming up, and Grealish has just played all of them recently. It's going to be tough for him to continue every single game. Still think it's a good transfer up against Leeds. That is very, very high ceiling for many of those Man City players. But to be fair, Grealish is not a player that typically scores a lot of points. He'll typically get, 1 assist in a game, or maybe the odd goal kind of rarely in a game for Manchester City. He's not like an Erling Haaland or a Kevin De Bruyne or Julian Alvarez, where they can score these mega points. Grealish is just that step below that. So not a super high ceiling player. Seems to be nailed on, but I am concerned a little bit about potential rotation, but still a decent transfer up against Leeds. You can't really go too wrong with that one. Dalot playing pretty well as well. I'll put him probably alongside De Gea there if you want to go for another Manchester United kind of defender there. Ollie Watkins, I feel like it's a difficult time for him. We're kind of on the fence with a lot of our Aston Villa players. They've got one good fixture left in the rest of the season, really. So, but again, we've got Wolves next. They just got battered. We've got, after that, Spurs. They're conceding a lot of goals, particularly in early parts of the game. Is Watkins going to be benefiting from that? Possibly. I know a lot of people are thinking of actually selling Watkins to fund kind of other moves, but I feel like Ollie Watkins for the next couple of game weeks could actually be pretty decent. So I'm going to leave him in good transfer because I feel like he could be dangerous, and I feel like a couple of blanks have maybe put a few people off him. Is this the beginning of a drop in form, potentially? I don't know. It's difficult to say, but he's just been so reliable previously to that. So, yeah, I don't know. Fabian Schär would be looking to avoid him this game week, but we're potentially going on him after that. I just feel like against Arsenal are probably going to score a goal. As bad as Arsenal are defensively, they have been scoring goals pretty consistently. They've been doing really well in attack. So I wouldn't want to be picking up defenders who are about to play Arsenal, to be fair. Next up, Lewis Dunk, who I feel like he's kind of optional. If you want to go that way with your Brighton defender, just get that nailed on centre-back, then that's absolutely fine. I'm going to put him in the optional category. Solly March, I'm going to put right pretty high, actually. I'm going to put him above Fernandes. I feel like March is more of a priority transfer than Fernandes right now. Disappointing game week so far in game week 34 for Solly March, but I don't think that's going to continue for too long. When Missimub is back in the team, when McAllister is back in the team, that's really going to benefit March once again. So I feel like he's going to be back into the top form that he's been showing very, very consistently recently. We may even see that against Manchester United later in the week. So March for Everton game, for the double game weeks after that, really a player that we do want to be picking up pretty soon. If not this game week, definitely the game week after, 100%. And next up, Danny Welbeck, who is maybe a bit of a knee-jerk player, a bit of a knee-jerk pick. I think he is kind of optional, but I do worry about Evan Ferguson coming back into this Brighton team, potentially taking some minutes from Welbeck. If we're completely honest, Welbeck has been super inconsistent for Brighton, and that's mostly been down to game time. He's not been nailed on in this Brighton team at all, but again, he is one of those high ceiling players, so he is kind of high risk, high reward. When he does play, he will get a decent kind of return rate for the price that you pay for him. So I feel like he is definitely optional, but he wouldn't be kind of the top tier Brighton player that I'd want to own, despite, you know, recent heroics. So maybe a little bit of a knee jerk, but I still do think he is an option at the very least. Steele, in terms of goalkeepers, I'd probably put him alongside De Gea as a goalkeeper that you could have now for the rest of the season. Probably won't make too many saves, but there might be the odd clean sheet there. And therefore, I feel like he is a good transfer, no more than that. So, a goalkeeper you can take for the rest of the season, and that's always a good thing, right? Erling Haaland, some people still don't have him, apparently. He's about to play Leeds. A must-buy, a must-captain. Unless you get early team news, and we'll try and get some early team news on the channel. Unless we get that early team news, then that he's not starting, then you pretty much have to captain Erling Haaland for game week 35 against Leeds. Like, they're conceding so many goals recently. I don't know what's gone wrong with Leeds over the last few months since kind of Jesse Marsch has left. It's been an absolute disaster of a time for Leeds, and I would be backing those Man City attackers all the way against them and trying to load up on Man City attackers as well. But yeah, Julian Alvarez, he's not in this tier list video, but I think we're going to have to stick him in some other videos this week because he is a player I'm having a real close look at. In fact, I would even arguably put Alvarez in like good transfer, great transfer. So if you're wondering about Alvarez, that's where I kind of put him. Could be a really nice differential, honestly. Luke Shaw, will put him alongside his Manchester United friends. I'm going to put him slightly above Dalot, just because he's a little bit more nailed on, and Shaw is, of course, on set pieces as well, which is very nice. Maybe, does he go above De Gea because you've got potential attacking returns? I guess maybe, yeah, it's kind of up to you. Shaw and De Gea, it's probably between those two as which one of those two you pick alongside Rashford, and then you probably pick one more out of Fernandes, Dalot, and out of Shaw and De Gea, whichever one you don't have, I guess. But yeah, the triple up on Man United is very much on. They've got to win their remaining games because the Liverpool are lurking and looking to get some top 4 placement if they can do it. Eze, he got good fixtures. He's, you know, scores the odd goal here and there. I'm still not really sure I'd be willing to use up one of my Crystal Palace, one of my midfield slots on a Crystal Palace midfielder, to be honest. So I'm going to put him low optional, but honestly, I'd debate putting him in a void, to be honest. We'll put him low optional. I guess you could go for him, but I just feel like that's not the way I want to move forward with my midfielders personally. I don't know how you guys feel about that one. Trent Alexander-Arnold, the time to buy him was probably last game week, and he would have been close to a must-buy last game week. I think I did say that Trent was probably one of the primary targets to buy. The one thing I like about Trent at the moment is that the defenders are just really, really difficult to pick out right now. There's not many clean sheets going around. The clean sheets that we do get are a little bit random, but what we are seeing from Trent recently is a lot of creativity, and kind of back to some of the creative numbers we've seen previously in previous years where Trent was pretty much essential. Unfortunately, we can't get the same clean sheets from Liverpool anymore, but in terms of defenders, if you're looking for defender points, outside of kind of Manchester United, who are keeping clean sheets, Aston Villa, who are keeping clean sheets, there's not really much going around. So, therefore, Trent is still a reasonably good pick just for those attacking returns. I'm going to put him in the good transfer category, even at this point. De Bruyne, I'm not sure what his injury status is right now, because obviously he missed last game. I don't know how available he is going to be for Gameweek 35, so that's one to keep an eye on. I feel like if he is available, he could definitely be considered a good transfer to take forward if you are happy to use up one of your Man City slots on him, but I don't think he's a must-buy, so let's put him somewhere in the middle. I'll probably put him slightly above Grealish just because of that slightly higher ceiling that he does have at his disposal. But he's going to be depending on his injury status. So definitely something we want to keep an eye on. Next up, John Stones. I feel like if I'm picking up a Man City player this game week, it's probably going to be an attacker, to be honest. I want to get more attackers for that Leeds fixture. I think that's probably the priority in general this game week. But still, John Stones, you know, you could get a headed goal from him. You're probably not going to get a clean sheet because Man City seem incapable of getting a clean sheet, despite the fact they're the best team, the best defence in the league, supposedly. All the underlying numbers suggest they are, but it just doesn't seem to come to fruition. At what point do we just accept that the data and the underlying numbers aren't everything, and football is played on grass? Maybe that puts him down into the optional category. I feel like he's a decent pick, but I just don't think he's a priority pick necessarily. So still a very decent option. Next up, Alexander Isak. I think he is going to be I'm actually going to put him in great transfer. I'm going to put him there, and I'll tell you for why. It's because Newcastle have that double game week coming up in game week 36, and next up they play an Arsenal team who don't know how to keep a clean sheet either. So Isak performing so well recently, I think we might see him and Wilson play at the same time. Maybe seeing Isak a little bit more on the wing, because both of those players just have to play. They're both playing so well. So Isak, definitely a player that we want to be having a close look at. If you've got a forward that you're willing to sacrifice in game week 35, then I would consider Isak at the very least. But he's not a must-buy yet. But yeah, by game week 36, we're going to be having a look at these Newcastle attackers and seriously considering if they are must-buys to get the best out of that double game week for Newcastle, because it could be a big one for them. Next up, Tyrone Mings, which is so difficult. He's got one good defensive fixture left. He's reasonably well priced. He's one of the most popular, he's the fifth most popular transfer of the game week so far. So I'm not gonna, I'm probably gonna upset some people if I don't put him, you know, in must-buy. But I'm not gonna put him must-buy because, you know, there's kind of one fixture left. Like I say, there's one good fixture left for them against Wolves, and after that, it's just not going to keep clean sheets. I can't really see after this game week when you're going to play Mings. He's just going to probably sit on your bench for the rest of the season. So if you want to go for him, see if you can pick up a clean sheet with him against Wolves, then I think that's absolutely fine. It's an option. I'll put him next to Martinez because you get a similar thing from him. But after that, he's probably going to be relegated to a bench player, I probably would say. But as I kind of mentioned earlier, Aston Villa do seem to be cheesing clean sheet points, so you never know what's going to happen there. So next up, the fourth most popular transfer of the game week so far, and boom, let me hear you say knee-jerk, and it's Pascal Gross. I'm going to put him in the avoid category straight up. Like, he scored 2 goals in the last game against Wolves, obviously, but before that, when was the last time he scored a goal? I believe it was game week 19 was the last time he scored a goal previously to that. So how many game weeks is that? Someone do the maths. Like 15 game weeks. He hasn't scored a single goal in 15 game weeks. That's ludicrous, or almost 15 game weeks. That is crazy. That is a lot of time to be not scoring goals. He picks up the very occasional assist, but typically Pascal Gross is playing pretty deep in midfield. It was rare to see him score multiple goals and get a mega haul for Brighton there. He's just not a priority Brighton midfielder, and I know people will be knee-jerking to Gross because he had a good FPL score, but in general, March is a better pick still, by far. You know, if you look at the underlying numbers over a kind of a slightly longer period of time, March is a much better pick. Caldo Mitoma is a much better pick. Even Danny Welbeck is a better pick. Even McAllister is a better pick. So when we've got 3 Brighton slots, we really need to make the most of them. Get the best Brighton players, not just any old 3 Brighton players. Do not knee-jerk to Pascal Gross. It's not necessarily going to continue every single game. However, Pervis Estupiñán, even though he scored, you know, fairly well, 9 points in game week 34 so far, I still feel like he is a very good pick going forward. We spoke about him before, his good numbers, his great attacking numbers. And oh my word, guys, if you watch that Wolves game, Pervis Estupiñán could have scored twice in that game. He was so close to scoring goals. I think he's genuinely a great transfer. Against Everton next, a team that don't score too many goals, I would be very keen to get Pervis Estupiñán. And I think the fact that he has shown so much attacking ability is what is relegating Dunk so low. If there was no Pervis Estupiñán in the Brighton team, Dunk would go higher. But the fact that you've got a kind of pretty much a straight choice between Estupiñán and Dunk, similar prices there, and Estupiñán is offering so much more in attack, you're going to get the same amount of points for them for clean sheets. In fact, Estupiñán often gets substituted off at like kind of 60 or 65, 70 minutes. And you can sometimes lock in a clean sheet early with him as well, in case there's a late goal against Brighton. I think the advantages of going for Estupiñán over Dunk are just kind of astronomical. So, yeah, a really good transfer. And he does kind of, you know, the fact that you do compare these 2 players, it relegates Dunk, unfortunately, a little bit lower. Next up, Marcus Rashford, who I think is more of a priority than Bruno Fernandes. Is he more of a priority than March? Not entirely sure, not entirely convinced, but he would be a pretty high priority transfer. I'm going to put him slightly above March. I'm going to put him there in a great transfer. I'm not quite happy to put him in must buy, but if we're saying Fernandes is a great transfer, then Rashford, you know, as a higher priority buy than Fernandes, it's definitely going to be higher than that. Probably a slightly higher ceiling than Fernandes as well. Rashford is probably in slightly better form than Fernandes. We put him in great transfer. He's almost a must-buy, but I don't think he is an absolute must-buy. But I would say, guys, looking through this tier list so far, because we have got 1 player left to go, if you've already got Erling Haaland and you don't have Marcus Rashford, is Marcus Rashford the next player you need to buy? Probably is. Like, yeah, genuinely. Next up, and it's the final player of the tier list video today, it is Callum Wilson, who I'm going to put above Isak. I'm going to put him above Estupiñán. I'm going to put him above Mitoma, and I'm going to put him above Fernandes as well. I feel like Callum Wilson is going to have a field day against Arsenal, and even though Isak seems to be playing more minutes than Wilson, whenever Wilson is on the pitch, he seems to be getting goals. He's been getting so many goals recently and playing so well recently for Newcastle that we've got to a point where Newcastle have to play him. Like, they can't not play him anymore. He's just doing it too well. So I can see definitely both of those Newcastle forwards playing in the same team together a little bit more often, because it seems to be working. Newcastle is just scoring crazy amount of goals at the moment. They've turned from a great defence really to a great attack in a matter of months, and therefore we kind of need to focus now our attention on Newcastle attackers. Next game week, we probably want to triple up on Newcastle somehow. That's probably going to be involved. You guys already have Trippier, maybe you've got Botman as well. We need to get 1 more Newcastle player in as well. I would think there's no problem with going for Wilson and Isak. I think they're both great picks. But right now, I'm slightly favouring Wilson. If they're both on the pitch, Wilson's going to be on penalties. If they're both on the pitch, Wilson is more likely to score. The minutes are slightly risky with Wilson, of course, and he can get injured at any moment, as we know historically. But at the same time, he's just doing so well at the moment, isn't he, guys? Doing so well. And I'm worried about him. As an Arsenal fan, I'm worried about Callum Wilson. I really am. He's the player I'm worried about the most. So, yeah, let's stick him in a great transfer and see what happens next. And there we go, guys. That is the completed tier list. I think we've got this relatively spot on. Oh, of course, there's lots of other players I'd love to talk about, so I'm going to be speaking about them in future videos in this week, I guess. But yeah, There we go. What do you think? Everyone in the right position? Any players I'm missing out that you think I should rank? Let me know in the comments. Yeah, let me know what you think. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you did enjoy this one, please do drop a like, do subscribe if you're new around here as well. Bicycle Keeper Void coming out tomorrow, and a few more surprise videos this week as well. We're going to try and mix things up, do some interesting videos. So hopefully you'll join me on that one. But aside from that, guys, thank you so much for watching once again, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.